Hey, Link here. Thanks for joining me for episode 102, where I speak with Stephanie Cooke, where we talk about writing for games versus graphic novels, how she got into writing, how she found her voice, how it felt to write for Archie Comics, words of wisdom from their experiences, what they enjoy about gaming, what made her want to work in games, her favorite games, life outside of gaming, and some lightning round questions. Before we get started, don't forget there are links in the episode description that you can follow to learn more about Stephanie as well as the podcast. Also, don't forget to like and share the episode, and without further ado, enjoy episode 102. Hi, and welcome to the Red Tunic Podcast, a podcast where I look to rediscover what makes gaming fun and enjoyable by having positive conversations with those related to the industry. My name is Link, and today I'm joined by Stephanie Cooke, a writer that has contributed to numerous graphic novels and is currently working with Kitten Studios. Hi, Stephanie. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate you, and you're welcome. Sorry, that's weird. I'm always nervous of how to answer that beyond saying no, thank you. But thank you.
It's mutual. It's copacetic. It's all good.
And I don't think it helps either because both of us are Canadian, right? So we get
Oh,
that little
yes.
weird standoff, and no one knows what to do.
Yeah. No, thank you. No, 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 thank you. And then we can this can be the whole podcast, the thank you podcast.
um, I'm very scared that one day that will happen for like 5 or 10 minutes before someone snaps the loop and goes, "We should stop."
Thankfully, at least there's editing tools that you could kind of cut that out and just take a comedic 1 to 2 minutes of it rather than the full length of it.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, that'll still be a weird thing to have to edit, though. All things, in honesty. Um, but Stephanie, before we get started, if you don't mind, could you tell me and anyone that's listening just a little bit about yourself, just so we, have the elevator pitch or what have you for who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a writer and editor. I primarily work on graphic novels and comic books, but I have been working, as you mentioned, with Kitten Studio for the last few years, developing games and writing games with them. Um, but I do a lot of outside of that, I do a lot of like middle grade graphic novels, young adult stuff. And I've worked on properties in comics such as like My Little Pony, Cat Ninja, Archie Comics, and other things like that. So I've been a big gamer my whole life pretty much, and it's always been something that I've wanted to be a part of. So I'm really, really fortunate that my skills with comics and graphic novels happen to overlap with video game stuff as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
So thank you for sharing that, and I'm curious if you don't mind speaking to, because I imagine the difference between writing for, any kind of graphic novel, whether it's for, um, uh, regardless of the age group. Sorry, I don't know how to properly here's the wrong word, chunk them out. So forgive me. Um, but I imagine regardless of the age group, when you're writing for something that is very linear versus like a video game, it would be a little different. So do you mind speaking to how that might be different? I'm sorry, that's probably a really weird phrasing of the question. I hope you understand what I was
No,
trying to say.
it's all good. I do understand what you're talking about, and it is something that I definitely was a learning curve for me. So yes, when I write comics or graphic novels, I do write those based. I'm an outliner. They say in writing there are pantsers and plotters. And people who therefore write by the seat of their pants and just kind of go with the vibes. I am a plotter. I like to plot things out. So, yes. So my stories you usually have a set direction that they're going in by the time I get to like writing them. And with a video game, obviously, when you are developing those, there is also an outline for the story and where things are going and whether it's a linear game or it's a little bit more open world, um, there usually is kind of like arc that you're trying to convey, and then there might be like other things to do, side quests, adventures, things to explore, etc. Obviously I'm speaking very like broadly. There's a lot of different type of games, but yeah, when I was first kind of coming to writing video games, the different kind of choose your own adventure aspect was something that was like kind of fun and appealing to me, but it's also a little bit like not overwhelming necessarily, because you are, like, plotting those out and talking about those and figuring it out too, but there's definitely a lot more branching possibilities and dialogue options, and you're really kind of, like, thinking about how a player is going to interact with the choices in the game and get from point A to point B rather than pick up a book and read that from start to finish. So it's definitely, like, very it's different, and there's a lot of different kinda angles, and it's a different format to write for, but there are, like, a lot of things that do kind of overlap with those skills. I think with, like, video games, with TV and movies, and with comics, there's a sort of similar screenplay format in the initial writing phase things when you're kind of scripting things out. Um and so that part of things is, like, very familiar and easy to kind of just, like, fall back into, a routine with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because yes, I understand what you're saying there, and I imagine it would be as well, because you know, in those cases, right? Like if you're focusing more on like the main plot, right? The main story is going to be the main story. So like I imagine that would be the anchor kind of to make sure everything else sort of revolves around it. Um
Yeah, yeah. You have, like,
s-
the kind of core loop to the game, I guess, is, like, what we kind of call it, like, just kinda the main portion of the game that the players are playing around and, hopefully through, but, like, eventually the game always kinda comes back to that point in one way or the other. Um, yeah, and obviously, like, the core loop of a graphic novel is the graphic novel.
y- yes, understory. The moment you said that, I was like immediately thinking, because like when playing a game, the core loop is what, like you said, what you come back around to. So in
Mhm.
like Mario, it's going to be the next level, or what have you,
Right.
what have you. And I was immediately thinking the insanity, I think might be the right word here. If you were reading a graphic novel that wasn't a choose your own adventure, that like you got to the end and it said, now go back to the start and enjoy it all over again, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you can do that. I think graphic novels, like, I mean, all forms of media have a way to enjoy again. You're never gonna like catch everything the first time around. And it's like fun to like, especially like with a visual medium, to go back and find things that maybe you didn't see before. There's like Easter eggs that get put into visual mediums all the time, and it's fun kind of sometimes knowing where the story is going and then going back and seeing little like seeds of it throughout. But yeah, it's definitely a little less like, yeah, you're not necessarily just like, oh, I want to play that through again. I want to see what different choices I can make. There's not a lot of that typically in something that you're reading.
Yeah, and I now I kind of actually do want to see, like a graphic novel at the end of it where it's just like the final page or the epilogue or what have you is, it's just saying go back to the start, but this time pay attention to so and so and try and watch them laying out their master plan or what have you.
Yeah.
That would actually be that would be weird, funny. I don't know the right word. It would be interesting. There we go. It would be interesting to see any form of media pull that off, being like, hey, now pay attention to them, right? Because I've I've definitely done that with movies where I'll watch a movie and like, at the end the whole everything comes together, and then being able to go back to it and re rewatch and pay attention to those little Easter eggs, or like the little plot things, being thrown out there. So like it makes
Hmm.
sense that you'd want to read it as well. It would be all it would, I'm just thinking it'd be hilarious to have like the end of it encouraging you to do it again, just to redo that loop. Sorry, I'm stuck in video
Yeah,
game logic
no,
right now.
I get it, I get it. I think there's movies like Inception that you finish and then you immediately wanna watch over and over again, or like The Prestige, Christopher Nolan movies, basically. But I think also, like, I really love, like, the genre of heist stuff, and, like, one of my graphic novels is called The Rack Pack, and it is about, like, 2 raccoons and a possum who thinks he's a raccoon, and they go on a heist for the best garbage ever. Um, and, we again, like, sow seeds throughout of what's to come at the end of the story. And I love a reveal in a heist where, you don't know if it's all gonna, like, pay off, you don't know if it's all gonna come together, and you think maybe it's all gone wrong, and then it all kind of still, like, happens. And it's fun rewatching things like that, rereading things like that, re-enjoying things like that, to kind of, like, go back and again, like, see. So I think the best stories, I think, are you can enjoy them in one go, but it's also so much fun to go back and see all of the things you didn't miss, or the little hints that you maybe didn't understand until you had the full context of the story. So yeah.
Yes, yes, exactly. And thank you. Those are really good examples of movies that also really highlight it. I like just the basically any Christopher Nolan film, because yes, the moment you said, I'm like, yeah, those are typically movies that have laid out a bunch of different things. Um,
Hmm.
Now, Stephanie, I am curious. I'm going to bug you with this one. I apologize if this is one you have been asked a lot. Um, and it's just something that's you get tired of having to answer or what have you. Um, However, I'm wondering, and in this case, I'm going to modify it a little. It's going to be a little more generic, but you can take it, in any direction that you'd like. But I'm wondering how you got into just in writing in general. If you want to take this in the direction of video games, that's fine. Or if you want to just play it high level, that is also fine. I'll let you answer that however you want to in this case.
I guess, like, I mean, it's a long story, I guess, with, like, writing, but, like, writing in general is something I've always just kind of done for fun since I was, like, a kid. I really loved to read, and was, like, really encouraged to read. And so, um, telling stories was always something that I liked to do. I was, like, a latchkey kid, so I was, like, on my own a lot. And the way I kind of dealt with that was, again, to, like, make worlds for myself. So from an early age, I kind of just, like, enjoyed storytelling as a concept. But, like, I didn't really I grew up in rural Canada. I didn't really have a means to, like, meet authors and to, like, understand that that was something attainable to me. I loved reading, I loved authors and what they were doing. I would follow certain creators, but, like, no one had ever told me that it was a job I could do. They hadn't also told me that it was something I couldn't do. I just didn't know how to get into it. So I did stuff for fun over the years until, in my 20s, I started news editing. Um, and it was the first time that I got, like, paid to write. Um, and it was like this turning point for me where I realized, oh, I could get paid to do this. And, well, news editing and, like, movie reviews, which I also was doing, are very different to what I do now. It really opened the door to creating a voice for myself with my writing, drawing people in to follow my work for something relatively mundane, if that makes sense. Um, and it just really kind of, like, changed what was possible for me. And that eventually, again, this is like a very abbreviated journey now, but that eventually brought me to writing comics and graphic novels. And then it eventually brought me to editing comics and graphic novels, which eventually then helped me expand my network out for people I knew. And I wound up connecting with a lot of folks in games. There's a lot of crossover between comics and games, and connecting with some folks who needed a writer, and were very open to helping me learn about writing for video games, which was something I had been long wanting to do for myself. So, um, at Kitten Cup, I edited. I wound up there because I worked with the creative director on an anthology, and we were in an anthology together. We didn't work on the same story, but we knew each other from these like networking events and like things that we did to promote this anthology. And we stayed in touch. We played D&D together through the pandemic. And around that time, they asked if I happened to know a writer that wanted to like do video games, that liked cats, that liked, tea and all these kind of things. And it really just like felt like it was a job that was made for me. So Kitten Cup was very open to helping me learn and figure that out. And I'm like very, very grateful because I had been getting really far in interview processes for video game studios for a long time, including some pretty big games and such. But I just hadn't been able to kind of like stick the landing because I didn't have experience. And so this was really finally my chance to step into that world and get to learn about it.
So, thank you for sharing that. And I understand that, as you said, it is abbreviated. And I can definitely understand how it would be difficult to abbreviate it given the, the wide spectrum of things you've worked on, the target audience or the
Mhm.
age groups, and then just cross everything. So thank you for that. And I understand, like I said, I understand how difficult that was. So I appreciate that. I do want to bug you with a few questions in that path though. Um,
Sure.
one of the things I'm curious about is you said you started like editing and writing reviews. And then, this would definitely carry through for other things. I'm wondering if you can, and I apologize if this is one of those questions that it's like actually a really complex and like big one. So I apologize if I'm creating another headache of you trying to have to like think of how to not let it be like a huge, huge thing. But on like the topic of like finding your voice, um, I'm wondering if you can speak to how that came about or like how you found how you were able to look at something and go, no, this is my voice. I'm struggling to think of like how to phrase it because for anyone that writes just saying yeah it's my voice probably is a little makes a little more sense to people that don't. But like
Mm.
I think the best way really is just saying like how did you know your voice when you found your voice?
Um, I think for me, like I like to put a lot of like humor into my whatever I'm writing, whether that's like news or reviews or my actual like fiction or the video games I work on. So like there is humor infused into it. I really like jokes and puns, and I really like to have fun with like wordplay and things like that. So I guess for me, figuring out my voice was like how would like if I was just kind of writing about my day, um obviously there's how I would write that would be very much about me. It would be very much in my voice. It'd be very much about my experience, about my world and the way that I viewed it. Um, and I kind of took that same approach, I guess, with like writing like reviews and news editing as well, where it's just like, how do I kind of add personality to this? How do I add flair to this? How do I make people interested in like my writing of reviews as opposed to some other reviewer? And for me, again, that is infusing those elements into that, and including like humor, including my point of view, including kind of little like quips and things that like I might do if I was just kind of talking to friends. Um, and I think the way that I write, whether it is like, again, news editing, whether it's how I am like on social media and stuff, is pretty like genuine to like who I am and who you get if you speak to me. Um, and so there's also a little bit of like flavor like that to it, where I'm putting kind of just like me onto the page, if that makes sense. So it took a really long time to kind of like get that down, but I think it was very heavily helped by the fact that I've like written over the years, I've kept journals over the years, and I've always been someone that has been kind of like, again, like a storyteller. Like I don't necessarily like that I have a weird magnet, but like I do. And so, like I like sharing wild stuff that happens to me. I like telling people about like my days, about all these things that go on. And so that has always kind of been the case for me too. So I guess like infusing those things that feel the most me into whatever project I'm doing. I feel like that's kind of a non-answer. Like that's so very subjective, but I guess like in distilling the qualities that I feel like make me me, and trying to put those into everything else that I do that I want to have feel like me too, is the short version.
So, you know, thank you. I apologize for the headache. I don't Headache's probably the wrong word, but I apologize for like the incredibly not easy to answer question, but I appreciate it because I understand what you are saying. And like, so thank you for that. I 100% understand what you're saying. And I think anyone that has ever tried to write something and has stared at it trying to figure out if it was like too bland or like if it doesn't have any personality or what have you. Um, I I think that's a fantastic answer because, like, just distilling who you are into it to be the personality, um, it makes sense. I sorry, it's one of those things where when you say it out loud, it's like, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense, right? But like sometimes, the it makes perfect sense answer just is, just being the simplest one, air quotes simplest one. Um, it just needs to be said before I go, yeah, okay, that makes perfect sense. I don't know why I would think otherwise. Um, and I'd like, I've had plenty of those moments asking people questions where they give an answer. It's like, okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But like, thank you for sharing it because I imagine there are people that probably having it just said just goes, oh yeah, okay, that just makes perfect sense, and then it just, it is right. So thank you for
Yeah.
for that.
I think it comes down to a lot about like practicing, the more you write, the more things you try, the more boundaries you push for yourself, and the more you step out of your comfort zone, you learn more and more about yourself every time you do that. So it's again like stepping outside of your comfort zone and trying things and still finding a way to make it you. So, yeah.
So I have two more quick questions regarding, just over the last things we've talked about, and then I promise we can move on. One is, as someone that, I don't want to say I grew up in rural Canada. I grew up in a small town that was like 5,000 people, including the surrounding areas. So like it was small, but not rural in my opinion. But I want to ask, how exciting was it for you to probably have went from going to like Max Milk or Becker's or what have you, and having the only comics available to you being Archie Comics, and then one day getting to write for Art or the Archie
Yeah, I
comic,
mean,
brand or what have you.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly it. Like I definitely we used to have to grocery shop in the next town over because we had a small grocery store in where I lived, which was like 200 people. But um we I would have to go to like the next town over mostly with my parents. And yeah, we did get like the Archie comics. So that was one of my bucket list items. Like I really do prefer writing my own stuff. Like I like having my own IP that I get to play around with and tell the stories in those worlds. But there are like a few things that like I always really wanted to get the chance to put my stamp on, and Archie was definitely one of them. So that was really surreal. And it was really fun to do. I grew up on it. And I think getting to do that and then like looking back and thinking to myself that I never could have thought that this was going to be something that I would get to do as a kid is just like wild. It's again like not something nobody people didn't tell me I couldn't be a writer, but there was no world in which I could have fathomed how to even kind of come to this. And yeah, getting to like think about if I could go back in time and tell young me that that is something that I would do is insane.
Yeah, yes, completely understandable for that because, like, yeah, like I, I think anyone that's grown up in a small town or not even a town can easily relate to like the small amount of things that you would see, be exposed to, and then being able to contribute is just like a wild, wild thing. So, thank you for that. And I'm also wondering, from your experiences, is there like any kind of um wisdom that you can share? Sorry, I stumbled there. From your experiences, if there's any kind of wisdom that you can share that, you would give to your younger self or to anyone else, really.
Um, I guess like just like stay curious, like write what you want to write, enjoy doing what you want to do, whether that's again like writing comics, writing prose, writing video game kind of stuff. And don't put pressure on yourself to kind of have a timeline in mind for that. Just like it's okay to have hobbies, it's okay to find your voice, it's okay to just do things for fun. And when you're ready to kind of pursue things, there's like so many resources out there now and ways that you can find access to learn about how to get into those things. And um, I think the first and foremost thing, though, is to just love what you're doing first. I think sometimes, especially like older like adults try to really like push people to have direction, like young people to have direction. And if they're like artsy, it's like they want them to like monetize that. It's all kind of about like monetizing your hobbies. And that really I think is a way to like crash and burn early on in your life. Um and you need time to kind of just like live your life and experience things and let that help inform your writing, and it's never too late to start writing. So like I just say to like make sure it's something that you enjoy first and foremost and that you're passionate about and that you love. And it's okay to just tell stories and to do things for you, but it's a really, really hard career to make sustainable for yourself. So I'd say to just like give yourself time to know if that's something you really want to do, and to like find connections, to make a network for yourself, and to find your people out there in the world and be passionate about it together and kind of come up in the industry together. Um, but don't ever let anybody force you to monetize something unless you want to, and if it's something you're really passionate about. So, you tell I'm a
So,
writer, I have long answers for everything.
so thank you, thank you for that answer. Um, I don't know how to properly respond to the "Can you tell I'm a writer?" Um, but no, thank you for that. I really appreciate's really the wrong word here. I really like the saying "stay curious," and also don't monetize unless you really want to, right? Because
Mhm.
like you said, anyone that's done anything that would be like a passion industry or passion led, um, has probably come into weird places where like they say to like their family, like, yeah, I'm doing the thing, and the answer is, well, are you getting paid for it? But it's like, well, no, I'm doing it because I enjoy it. Like a painter or what have you, or a
Mhm.
writer or any of the other myriad of things that are passion driven. And like I just think that's wonderful advice to like, not say go and get paid right away, or don't feel pressure to get paid for it if you just want to play with it, right? Um so
Yeah, yeah.
thank you for that. I think that's just wonderful advice. That along with like the stay curious, because you know what else are you going to do other than not want to keep learning or keep playing around or what have you, right?
Yeah, it's hard. Like, I went to school initially for, like, advertising and graphic design, because I wanted something that I could put my, like, art skills to use that was, like, a air quotes, "real job." And, like, outside of, like, high school, having my work graded and really kind of, like, torn apart put me in a really bad place, like, mentally, and I didn't really want to do that. I didn't really want to create art for other people in that capacity, and I wound up leaving and not pursuing that anymore. And that was for the best. It like I learned a lot of stuff from that still, but it was like not for me. But there's just like there's a lot of ways to be self-taught these days for the arts, and you don't necessarily need to have your stuff like graded by teachers. And like obviously critiques and feedback and everything are invaluable for growing and learning as a creator, and I think you should eventually, if you want to have it be taken seriously, you need to put yourself forth like that. But again, it's okay to just like not, and it's okay to just create stuff and to do other things to pay the bills while also pursuing stuff that is fun to you, like art, whether again that is drawing or painting or writing or whatever. It's just everybody is so keen to capitalize on hobbies, and it just people just need to like enjoy having hobbies more.
Yes. Yes, I understand, I agree. I think many people also understand and agree with that. And I think that's a good jumping off place to ask about, you know, uh what it is that you enjoy about games. If we're talking about things that you enjoy doing, uh and in this case, as a hobby or for work, and in even more of this case, both gaming writing for games and writing, I would assume, are things that you enjoy and are started as or could still be a hobby. I'm just wondering if there's, anything particular about gaming that is what makes you enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I enjoy about pretty much like all forms of media is the escapism. Um, I love being able to immerse myself in a story and to be transported somewhere else, and to hopefully, I really like character driven stuff. I really like figuring out what's going on in their world. So that's really exciting to me to kind of explore that and discover who they are. Um, so it's so much fun, specifically with games, to not just like get to immerse yourself in the character and the story, but to have the options to help guide that narrative and make choices with them and see how they potentially grow and change and evolve throughout the course of the game. I really just like I enjoy like a linear game, but a game that also has consequences to their actions, and what you kind of like choose to do throughout the game is very fun and exciting to me too. It's really, it's just so cool to get to experience that and to go through just all of these choices that you could potentially be making if you were in this world. I think that's just like a really exciting thing about games that you obviously can't really get with like a lot of other mediums. It's just so immersive, and it's tells such a breadth of story, and I just find that really incredible.
So, thank you for speaking that. I find that really interesting because, like, I I imagine there's a lot of people that can relate to that and just have never thought about it in the same way, if that makes sense. Because, like, I imagine that's one of those things where, again, you hear someone say it and suddenly the light bulb goes off. You're like, oh, hey, yes, being able to like immerse yourself in that without. So I'm blanking on the right words to go with that, but being able to like immerse yourself in that and like live through someone else's like another world, another set of characters
Yeah,
and
like live
such.
vicariously.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, that's the perfect way to put it. Because I'm sure you or many people, I myself included, not to like try and make this seem like I'm not in that list, have like intentionally or otherwise lived vicariously through other people's experiences, out of most of the time I think it's just out of like sheer admiration or like the nonsense of the story or what have you, right? Like in all the positive ways is what I'm getting at there. But like I don't think I've ever thought about it that way for games, but at the same time, I've definitely spoken about it with games in that kind of context, right? Like pulling off, like playing a game like Devil May Cry, where you like, do a really big combo or what have you, living vicariously through the character on screen and their action, you know,
Mhm.
saying it out loud like that, you're like, yes, that is a wonderful thing. But until you had said that, weirdly, I had never actually thought of that outside of what would be like immersive Sims. So thank you
Right.
for putting it that way because it's always nice to have something said that makes you go, "Hey, that's that's me," or
Right,
whatever,
right, right.
right? So with that as well, Stephanie, I am curious. Uh, like, do you have a favorite game or a game that made you want to write for games, or was it kind of a thing where you just enjoyed games and that's just sort of where the road to Rome kind of took you? I hope that makes sense because
Um,
I think I
yeah,
screwed up that question.
I've always like, okay, so for context, I I lived in rural Canada and I read a lot, but I wasn't allowed to really watch TV or play video games. We didn't have any consoles at home. And my mom was like very adamant that I not play video games. So I really, really always wanted to. And so I'd go to like my friend's place to like watch TV. I'd go to my friend's place to play video games. I'd go to my aunt's place to play video games. Um, and I loved them. I was like so excited. But it was also, I think, something about the fact that it was like forbidden fruit. Like I wasn't allowed to play them, but I was like obsessed with them. I think that's something about, I have ADHD, so my brain is like very neurodivergent, and it's like very easy for me to kind of like hyper fixate on things. And video games allowed me this like opportunity to just like hyper fixate on something and like go through like levels and like immerse myself and like play through something and challenge myself as like things got harder and harder. And so I really just like loved getting lost in those worlds, and just like having that same sort of thing where I loved storytelling and I loved what kind of could kind of come of like these things. So there wasn't really like any specific games that made me want to, I guess, like write games, but I spent a lot of time with my, like, childhood best friend at her family's house, and, like, she wasn't, like she was okay at games, but, like, I was, like, really good at games, and so she would, when things got hard, like, pass over the controller to me, and I would play, and we both kind of just, like, took turns playing and watching each other watch each other play, and those were just, like, really cozy memories for me, and, we would play, like, the Zelda games, like, the early on, like, Majora's Mask, and, we also really loved, the Final Fantasy games, and I thought it was, like, so cool how you could be playing the game and just, like, doing stuff, but then there was these, like, sweeping cutscenes that told this, like, larger, incredible story, and I loved how game to game there were callbacks to certain characters and the Easter eggs in them, and I just thought that was, like, so cool. Um, it was, like, a big step up from, like, the games I'd play at my aunt's house, like Star Fox and, like, Donkey Kong and Mario, which are obviously, like, classics, but it was, like, my first kind of, like, introduction to something more narratively driven as opposed to just kind of like a platformer, and that really got to me too. Um, I think, like, Zelda really stuck with me. Zelda was something that I really had a lot of fun with, and I really loved the overlap game to game. Again, like, the callbacks and the things that are the same, but also telling a completely different story. Um, and yeah, I think probably things like Zelda had and Final Fantasy probably had some of the biggest influence on me, but I played a pretty wide breadth of games based on whichever friends of mine I would go over to see them and what consoles they had and what games they had. So I was really at the mercy of my friends and their taste for the most part, but they a lot of it did wind up sticking with me.
So, thank you for sharing that. And I like the image of trading the controller back and forth. I like the idea of or the image of it being that you, the person that didn't really have access to video games or TV or what have you, being the better of the players, and you being the one stuck doing the hard stuff or the more difficult things or what have you. Um, I just think that's amusing. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm also curious because, with that kind of dynamic and given the games that you meant like Majora's Mask, I have an idea of, where what would have been out at the time kind of thing. So it would have been the Nintendo
Mm,
64, I'm assuming. Um
yeah.
so the question, for this one is with the power dynamic of you being the better player or however you'd like to phrase it, I'm wondering how difficult it was to not always win at Mario Party and ruin that friendship.
We didn't really, like, play, like, Mario Party kind of, like, a lot, like, that wasn't one of the we mostly played, like, narrative like, it's funny because like, it would have been easy, I think, for us to just, like, then play, like, two-player games together, like, that would have made sense, but those weren't really the games, like, my best friend growing up was also an only child, and I was an only child, and she's kind of the closest thing I've ever had to a sister, like, I've known her since I was, like, I think, like, 5, and we like, I spent genuinely probably, like, nearly as much time with, like, her and her family as I did, like, my family. Um, so she was really the closest thing I had to my sister, but I think she would get games with her in mind first and foremost. And so it really just turned into, like, the sharing between us of, like, typically one player games as opposed to, like, us buying, like, co-op games. Like, her parents, like, indulged that because, she didn't have a sister she had to share with. She didn't have anyone she had to share with aside from, like, me, who would kind of just, like, crash that fantasy for her. Um, but, like, with love, like, I wasn't ruining that experience. We were doing that together, but she definitely, like, bought things that she was, like, really excited about. Like, I didn't really have, like, internet at that time, but she did, and she was, like, way ahead of the curve on those things and knew about what games she wanted to play, knew what things people were excited about, and I hadn't really, like, figured that out for myself yet, so, like, I was really happy to be along for the ride, but I did sometimes play Mario with a different friend of mine who I've also known pretty much my whole life. And yeah, she had like a Super Nintendo. And so we would play Donkey Kong or Mario. But again, like not Mario Party, not anything like that was like meant to be really everyone gets a turn kind of thing. It was just like we would play single player or maybe two player on some of those like early Nintendo games, but that was really it. Like I don't recall really a time when anyone I was playing games with ever was just like buying it and playing it with the intent of like, oh, my friend's gonna come over and we're gonna like play this together. I don't think there was like as much of that then, really.
So, I'm part of me is so just for context, I also was a single child growing up, but my mother worked a lot and she indulged me having friends over all the time. So like uh, I would intentionally try and get games that, or so would they, because my one friend had a little brother and all that fun stuff. So like the idea of getting co-op games, air quote co-op games, because Mario Party was not a co-op game. Um, is just something that like I did a lot or I participated a lot in. So part of me is, you know, um, I, I'm trying to like I don't feel sorry is way too strong of a word, especially because the other side of the coin is, you were both lucky but not lucky because like I think anyone that had spent hours playing Mario Party with people, I don't know where I was going with that one, um, had 100% ran into the issue where at some point you go crazy and you start trying to sabotage each other, right? And like the potential of a friendship getting ruined in a game like Mario Party or Mario Golf because the person's trying to line up their shot and you just keep pressing the taunt button or the cheer button and
Right.
screwing them up. As fun as that was, someone eventually went crazy. So,
Mhm.
part of me is, feels a little sorry for you because you didn't get to experience that, but also part of me is envious of you because you didn't have to experience the potential like friendship ruining moments because everyone was going crazy as, everyone was going crazy. But also I think that's fabulous to hear because I did have a similar thing as well, and I think many people have, where like as a family or like a tight friend group kind of thing, where they would take turns on single or co-op games that were co-op kind of in the same way Donkey Kong was, where it was like you die and then the other person takes control and back and forth kind of stuff. Um, but no, I think that's that's also just a fabulous way to experience games because I think a lot of people have done that and like it's always a lot of fun to not have to worry about competition and you can just solely focus on like enjoying yourself in that moment, right?
Yeah, I genuinely have like no qualms with like how the games we played like we would sometimes go to like a corner store that had games like for rent and we would like choose games together, but like those weren't games that we like really gravitated to. Like we still really gravitated towards like a one person game or like sometimes yeah again like a co-op, but like we were really more interested in games that we were drawn to the story for as opposed to that we could like play like together for like the experience. So I don't know, I guess like the fact that I've been like really drawn to like narrative and character driven things has been something that like I brought throughout my childhood. It probably comes from like really the fact that I'm like a really big like reader too, and like those are the kinds of stories I like to read about. So the fact that those are the games I like to play too probably also says something.
So, I'm curious about this as well. And I think, you can interpret this to be like, your favorite games or however you'd like to, as tight or as loose around favorite games as you would like, really. But I'm wondering if you have like a short list of favorite games that you would, that you think back on and speak fondly of. Like I know you mentioned, like you mentioned Zelda, you mentioned Final Fantasy, but were there any others that kind of like sat in the same? I don't want to say bucket, but that sat in the same hands being held up in terms of good memories. I'm sorry, I was trying to think of like some kind of visual, like whatever, to like just what have you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like again, like the Zelda games for sure. I I didn't really ever like I remember GoldenEye being like a big thing. Like I remember my best friend's brother would play it all the time and I remember watching him play it, but it was like not a game that he ever let us play with him. But like I think, like the Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, are definitely like up there with the games that I really like loved the most. Specifically like Final Fantasy like 7. Me and my friend were really obsessed with this scary game called Fatal Frame for a while. And the second game, but like we were both like really big wimps and so we were so easily like scared um of this game. We had another game called like Quest 64 that was like so silly. And like I don't even think it was like necessarily like good, but we were like obsessed with just like how silly and nonsensical it was. So we would like neither of us owned it, but we would always like go to the store in which again we would sometimes rent games. And no one else was taking this game out because it was like low key like not great. But like I really had so much fun playing that. My friend was like also really obsessed with like Pokemon, like all the Pokemon games. And so eventually she like gave me an old like she got a Game Boy Color, so she gave me her old black and white Game Boy and then would give me like her um cast off games from Game Boy. And so I have a lot of like fondness for like the early like Pokemon games. Um like I'm so, like there's nothing really like super out there for what I kind of enjoyed. It's a product of me living in a rural place that was like beholden to kind of like popular stuff that like a rural corner store would get, um and that I would have like access to. But we also like were beholden to like our parents kind of well, my parents were like no games, period. But like my friends' parents were pretty like, do whatever you want, I trust you. Um and so we would sometimes like push the limits a little bit, but like really like we were just like interested in what we were interested in. I'm trying to like think back on like other games that like we had. It's so wild trying to remember like which feels like a lifetime ago for me. Um we did play like a lot of like N64 and then like PS2 was very prevalent in um like our um later years, our high school years. And we really got like pretty like obsessed with that. But yeah, again, like the Final Fantasy games. I'm trying to think of like if there was anything else that I'm like looking at games as we speak. I'm just like trying to unlock hidden memories of stuff that we probably played. But I honestly probably I have a bunch of my PS2 games still, and I feel like if I went into those, I would like look at that and be like, "Oh my God, I forgot this game even existed." But it's like in a storage box in my closet.
So thank you for sharing that. And just the statement of, not really having like too many games that were like out there or what have you. Um and I think because I've been asked that question as well, and it's always one of those things where it's like trying to think of, games that might be out there or what have you. But like in my mind, it's like everyone likes Zelda, right? But it's always the
Mhm.
reason that people like Zelda is the reason that I'm always super interested in like the answer. So like thank you for sharing that because like, you know, there was it's always nice and interesting to hear because like not everyone experiences the same way and getting to hear how you experienced and what made it special to you is just, it's always nice. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Now, Stephanie, I don't want to. Wow, sorry, I just really botched up how I was going to transition that one. Um, outside, outside of games, what do you do? What do you do to relax? What do you do to enjoy yourself? Sorry, I just felt the best way to go was not even try and like find a nice way to phrase it. Just dive right in.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, yeah, again, outside of games, I love to read, as mentioned. I love to read like prose novels, but I also love to read graphic novels too. I'm big on that. I am a big like movie and TV watcher. I love to binge something. I also like I love again character and narrative driven stuff, but also love a little bit of drama. So I love reality TV. Um, love to decompress with that. I'm also, yeah, I don't know. I used to be a lot more active and like I like to actually like also like play games. Like I like to like sport. Um, but I haven't admittedly done that as much lately. But I also really like board games. I like things where I can just kind of like immerse myself and have fun and get to kind of like again like see other kinds of storytelling. Like that is probably the most inspiring thing to like my own work is like consuming other stuff just for the sake of it, like not going into it being like I need to be inspired, like I need to go find something that's going to like unlock some like need to like tell a new story. I just like trying new things. I like playing new games. I like experiencing new things and having experiences for myself and with the people that I care about. And um, my favorite way to do that is through stuff that we can really kind of like talk about. And that often is like, again, like pop culture kind of stuff. I also really like doing like a pub trivia night?
So thank you for sharing. I do want to bug you with a few of the things that you had mentioned, just because, you know, an easy thing to follow up with. Sorry, that makes it sound like low effort. um,
No, it's okay.
um, but like it's an easy thing to like ask about because, not everyone is always going to have this kind of exposure. So like is there like an easy recommendation for like a board game that you if people want to like get into board games or were looking for a new one to play, is there one that you could recommend?
Hmm. I've like forgotten every board game that I've ever played in my entire life. Let's see. I have so many and yet currently cannot think of anything. For board games, I can't remember what it's called. Let me see if I can find it here. Um
It all like in your defense, I understand what you're saying because like after you get a handful of board games, they just sort of become set dressing for a while until you
Yeah.
like pick it up, right? And then it's just like it's a shelf of games and you're like, those are games and you never you stop focusing on each one, right?
Yeah, there's like I think there's this game, I think it's called Modern Art. I'm trying to like find it here. Um, yes. So like there's like this game that like my friend recently introduced us to called like Modern Art, and you have to like basically you get like a certain amount of money and you have to like bid on paintings, and at the end of it basically you have to have the most like paintings that everyone else has, and then that is I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. It's really fun. It's like an art auction game where you kind of have to think about like how much money you have, the the popularity of a painting, and you have to be like strategic with outbidding other people and driving up like prices for things, but also ultimately driving up the value of the things that you have in your collection. So that was really fun. And then I think people get really intimidated by something like D&D, like Dungeons and Dragons, and it can be a really daunting thing to take on and kind of be like, I want to find a group, I want to learn how to play, I want to like commit to this journey, which isn't really easy all the time. But there is a card game version of it called Dungeon Mayhem, and it's so much fun. It is so easy to play, and you basically get a character, a set of character cards for like um an orc barbarian or like an elf paladin, and you have like a little HP card, and you get kind of these like attack cards and stuff, and it's just you're pulling from your shuffled pile, so it's like completely randomized. And you get like a little glimpse into what kind of each class in D&D looks like in this like really fun burst of action that's like just 15 to 20 minutes to play a game. And it's really good for like anywhere from like 2 to like 6 people, I think. And you can get like all these like really cool expansions for it too. They even have like beyond D&D, they have like a Marvel expansion for it, which I admittedly don't have, but I did get like this like monster expansion pack where you can play as like a dragon or a beholder. And it's a really like fun way to dip your toe into the D&D universe without like fully committing to it.
So, thank you for those recommendations. I can speak fondly of uh Dungeon Mayhem as well. It's always fun to break out in a group. But also thank you
Mhm.
for modern art, because that seems like an interesting game. I looked at it really quick just to get like a visual idea of what you were describing, and that seems like a unique take. So, thank you for those recommendations.
Course. I always feel bad. Like I love giving recommendations, but sometimes like on the spot, I've just like immediately forgotten anything I've ever enjoyed ever.
I will not fault you on that. I have been there, and also some of my questions, they kind of lend themselves to like putting you on the spot, and I always feel just a little guilty about it, because it's like, you know, you're in the moment, and then suddenly like, oh crap, I have to do this thing that actually requires not being in the moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I usually like I have a thing called like Storygraph, which is like an independently run kind of Goodreads, and I use like Letterbox to track, or sorry, Storygraph for like books and like comics, and I use like Letterbox to track like the movies I watch. I don't really rate things anymore, but like when people ask me about like books or movies, I'm like, "Oh, I can pull this up and I can see what stuff I've watched recently." But I don't really have like a way to track that with board games. I just have like kind of like go-to favorites and stuff. And yeah, so like sometimes it's just one of those things where if it's like I'm usually prepared for like a recommendation ask, but then sometimes I'm not.
So, I thank you for uh suffering. Suffering's the wrong word. Thank you for, stepping into that and being able to think of things on the spot. I like I said, I know how hectic that question can be. So thank you for, just wow, powering through it. I don't know what I was trying. Plowering, I think, is where I was going. Through it with me there. Um, Now,
Yeah, no
Stephanie,
problem.
I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I do want to let you get on with your evening or your day or what have you. Sorry, it's, we're both in Canada. It's like just after 4:30. The sun's already gone. So, I don't know if it's
I
evening,
know.
if it's day. I don't know what's happening anymore. But I do want to bug you with some, a lightning round if you have the time and tolerance for it.
Sure, absolutely.
Awesome. Now, I just want to make sure, as I mentioned before we started, these are random, lighthearted, nonsensical questions. You know, feel free to take them as, just answer them as quick as you want. There's no judgment. I also, say that if you think on them too hard, there's a good chance they will fall apart. So be careful with that. I have fallen to my own, fallen to it before. So just giving you that heads up. What video game character do you feel is most likely to text you a picture of their feet at 2 a.m. and ask, do these look the same size to you?
Hmm. I'm going to say Luigi from Mario. I can't explain or quantify why, but that's what I feel in my heart of hearts.
And that is at the end of the day, that is the only real valid answer then is whatever your heart of hearts says in the moment. If a fast food restaurant had a meal based on your favorite game series, what would that meal be called?
Hmm. Hmm. I This this feels like additional explanation needed because I haven't talked about this game, but, like, the first thing that came to mind was something called Is It Poison? And I thought about I'm a big fan of, like, the Assassin's Creed franchise, which is obviously about assassins, and assassinating things. So that's, like, a game that I've, like, followed pretty much, like, since its, like, inception. So that's what I'm going with. I don't think that's gonna be something that I'd wanna order, and I don't think, you know, I would want to eat it because with a name like Is It Poison? Why would you? But that again was the first thing that came to mind.
So, thank you. Yes, I understand completely. It's kind of like an even more high stakes version of eating the is it a good or a bad jelly bean game, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Much
it's
more
like
high
a fast
stake.
food roulette. Yeah.
But no, thank you for that. I'm gonna hit you with one more.
Okay.
What costume and abilities does Kirby inherit from you?
Mm. Um, I think with a costume, it would be like and this is in the Nintendo Mario world, but like a raccoon onesie. Like I do have one of those onesie things that I love wearing when it's like cozy. So definitely probably that. And the abilities, um, binge eating snackies. So like just like a bottomless tummy for snacks. And punning just really likes to tell um delightful puns or cringeworthy puns if that isn't your favorite form of comedy. But it should be.
So thank you for that, Stephanie. And I do want to note on this one that your your version of Kirby would be Kirby just in a raccoon suit, basically.
Yeah. Yeah,
He's al-
exactly.
but no, thank you for that. Now, as I said, I did want to help move you towards the door, so that way I wasn't stealing too much more of your time. I, if you will indulge me, however, I have, because you mentioned puns a few times, and the the compulsion to share a few puns with you has been growing. I'm wondering if you're okay with me sharing a few puns with you to see how you feel about them.
Sure.
Thank you. So, the first one, obviously, is what is the difference between a bad joke and a dad joke?
What?
The D.
Great. Great.
Um,
Love it.
uh, sorry. I am aware that that is a bad joke. So, thank you for humoring and or tolerating.
I genuinely love bad jokes. I once sent in a bio to somebody that I was a pun connoisseur in it, and the person who uploaded it to their website when I went to go see it, it said blah blah blah, all the other stuff, and then Stephanie likes blah 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 other stuff, and then instead of saying pun connoisseur, it said she likes bad jokes, and I was like, rude, so rude. Um, but anyways, yeah. So I mean, they are bad jokes, and that's okay. I like them still.
And I have one more for you. And
Okay.
sorry, my the cat in the room I think was trying to discourage me, but I'm gonna go through with it anyway. What did Ernie say to Bert when Bert asked him if he wanted ice cream?
What did he say?
Sure, Bert.
Great, 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 great. I love it.
So thank you for humoring me. Those are the only puns I have. As far as I'm aware, they are my puns. Feel free to share them, exploit them, what have you, if you so much as choose to. Because,
Thank you.
what good is a pun if it's not, something you can force
Yeah,
onto other people? But
sharing is caring.
yes, exactly. Sharing is caring. But Stephanie, I have nothing else to bug you with. I've taken up an hour or so of your time. I don't want to steal more than that. However, if there was anything else you did want to discuss, a cool game, something else you're working on, or something you just feel more people should be aware of, by all means, the floor is yours. As well, please let everyone know where they can find more information about you, which I'll also include in the episode description.
Yeah, I mean, social media is constantly in flux. So if you're curious about anything else I do, Stephanie Cooke, Cook with an E on the end, .ca is where you can find me, including what video games I'm working on, what graphic novels and comics I have. But relevant to this show, I am, as mentioned, working with Kitten Studios, and we have a game called Pico, which is a cozy tea making simulator that takes place in a town populated by cats. It is in early access right now, and we are working to polish it and get it ready for its full release, which will be sometime in 2025. So we're really, really excited for that. It's been over 3 years of work for me, and it was in development well before I came on board. So that's really, really exciting. And we have some other fun things to talk about soon. So yeah, follow me there. I'm also Hello Cookie on Blue Sky and Instagram. And yeah, I think that's it. Thank you so much for having me.
Again, Stephanie, the pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much for making time to be here to talk with me. As well, I will include those links for sure in the episode description. So anyone that's curious, easy way for them to learn more about Pico, or or you, or see what other things you've worked on, or what have you, what have you. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. I'm always happy to talk about other things that I've worked on too. And please reach out and say hello.
Definitely, yes. I think that's always a nice thing to hear, that people are, what's the right way to put it? Encouraging, you know, my brain has went blank on the right way to phrase this. Just saying hello, like or what have you. Sorry,
Hmm.
I lost it. But no, thank you for that, as well as thank you, for agreeing to talk with me. And if there wasn't anything else, I will definitely let you get on with your day.
Oh, well, again, yeah, anytime. And thank you for having me.
So thanks again to Stephanie for making time to have this conversation with me, and thank you for joining us on the Red Tunic podcast, as well as a special thanks to Roland Jenkins for the use of music from the title track from Road Steep. Be sure to check out the episode description for links to socials, websites, and other means that will allow you to learn more about or support Stephanie and the podcast. While you're doing that, share, like, follow, whatever else makes you think the algorithm work. Thanks, till next time.